Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. Today we bring you some news. Catherine exposes Camilla's bullying of Charlotte Palace in Meltdown. A mother's instinct reshaped the dynamics that took place within palace walls, as described in The Quiet Reckoning. When it comes to the painstakingly managed realm of the British monarchy, which is a cosmos based on centuries of quiet formality and carefully produced smiles, even the simplest look may carry the weight of a decree. The most profound realities about power, family, and the invisible limits that define them are often revealed in the most tranquil moments, which are far removed from the glare of cameras and the clamor of the audience. As far as I can tell, this is not a matter of public rumor or overt scandal. A silent reckoning that took place behind the glittering gates of Windsor and the misty highlands of Balmoral, transforming the internal landscape of the House of Windsor, is described in this chronicle. It is a history of meetings that are subtle but revealing. It is the tale of a mother's determination, a queen's adherence to tradition, and the quiet, uncompromising struggle to save the soul of a child in a setting where tradition often takes precedence over empathy. As far as the general public is concerned, the Prince and Princess of Wales are emblematic of the dynamic and contemporary future of the monarchy. In his few instances of open reflection, Prince William has presented a picture of a family life that is filled with love despite the fact that it may be hectic at times. During one of his conversations with Princess Charlotte, he expressed his devotion by saying, "It's been obviously fantastic and she's been a little joy of heaven." Having said that, he has also recognized the difficulties that are inherent. At the same time, it is a greater burden having to care after two young children, particularly when George is around. But no, it's fantastic having a lovely little family, and I'm so thrilled. He finished with a statement that has won him the affection of millions of people. He's a little monkey. Catherine has been doing an outstanding job as a mother, and I am beyond pleased with her accomplishments. This idea of family warmth, on the other hand, is preserved inside the rigorous framework of an institution that dates back centuries. On the other hand, the dynamics behind the scenes are immensely more complicated. Despite the fact that she was equipped with a tremendous sense that she had cultivated over years of combining public duty with private life, one royal mother did not explode when she spotted a trend that she feared was harming her child's trust. She performed a role. What transpired after that was a quiet clash that no one saw coming, a moment that would discreetly but irrevocably redraw the boundaries of power and respect inside the family. It is possible that this narrative may cause you to reevaluate your understanding of the dynamics that exist inside the royal family. When it came to her children, Princess Catherine had acquired a tremendous instinct that she had cultivated over time. She had been navigating the hazardous waters of royal life for more than a decade, and during that time she had learned to identify even the most microscopic variations in their conduct or mood. Over the course of that morning, when the family was getting together, she saw something about Princess Charlotte that caused her to feel a glimmer of anxiety. Despite the fact that she was recognized all across the globe for her bright and inquiring temperament, as well as a touch of delicious cheekiness, the little princess had been unusually silent. She did not seem to be agitated or behaving in a manner that would attract attention to herself. In contrast, she seemed to be withdrawing, her posture becoming more diminutive, as if she were attempting to disappear into thin air. Catherine made a mental note of them, but she did not pursue the matter further. A gathering of the family had taken place in order to commemorate one of the recent charitable achievements of Queen Camilla. The event was a formal lunch that took place in one of the state chambers of Windsor Castle that is more private. The atmosphere was beautiful and intimate at the same time. These kinds of gatherings were not uncommon. They were an essential component of the internal machinery of the monarchy. Their purpose was to bring together members of the family who did not often spend lengthy periods of time in each other's company in an unstructured manner. In addition to the Waleses and Camilla's extended relatives, the guest list also included a few members of the extended royal family. The fact that these times were essential for preserving internal connections and more crucially presenting a unified face to the public was something that was universally acknowledged, despite the fact that the dynamics that took place behind the scenes were more nuanced. As usual, Catherine maintained her calm demeanor throughout the whole situation. Her private job as a mother frequently requires her to maintain a quiet and vigilant watch, particularly in situations when her children interact with people who are not a part of their personal, carefully protected family. Her public role, on the other hand, requires a specific combination of elegance and caution. The Prince of Wales had effortlessly adapted to the rhythm of the day, gliding across the room with the practiced ease of a future king. He was conversing with his father and a few staff members who had been with the royal family for a long time. Catherine, on the other hand, continued to exhibit the typical heightened awareness that she has. In the latter part of that afternoon, the youngsters were led into one of the side salons, which was a chamber that was furnished with low tables for afternoon tea and activities that were gentler. The environment was formal enough to uphold the norms of the castle, but it was also laid back enough to give the youngsters a degree of freedom while they were there. A small group of younger royal relatives and members of the royal family who were farther away were seated next to Princess Charlotte. As she stepped away to interact with other visitors, Catherine assisted her in settling into her chair, kissed her on the head, and gave her a last comforting gaze before leaving. As of that moment, there was no evidence to imply that there was a problem. Catherine was having a chat with a senior royal assistant around 45 minutes later when she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. The talk was cordial, but focused on the important topic at hand. She followed Charlotte as she walked by one of the entrances, which was located across the hallway. Her normally pink tone had disappeared from her face. Despite the fact that she was not sobbing, her lips were drawn into a narrow, tight line, and her appearance seemed to be more rattled than merely weary and exhausted. The instinct of a mother is a strong and fundamental kind of force. Almost quickly, Catherine excused herself, interrupting the discussion in a manner that was both kind and forceful and adding a look of apology to her face. It was a serene voice that betrayed none of the sense of urgency that she was experiencing. "Please forgive me for a moment," she added. In order to locate her daughter, she traveled. A liminal place away from the polished grandeur of the main rooms, she caught up to her at the end of one of the passageways that was less often used. It was next to an entrance that was designated for service. Charlotte was standing by herself, her little hands clasped in front of her, her attention fixated on the complex pattern of the carpet. She was concentrating on the carpet. Catherine got down on her knees and came down to her daughter's level. She moved slowly and deliberately so that she would not shock her daughter. "What exactly has taken place, my darling?" she inquired in a low tone, her voice fading into a quiet whisper. Charlotte paused, her gaze keeping fixed on the ground the whole time. She said, "Nothing, Mummy," which is the typical reaction of a toddler when something is very much the matter. Catherine, on the other hand, continued on, but not via questioning, but through patience. She had a unique ability to give her children space, while also letting them know that she was totally there, providing them with a secure harbor each time there was a storm. Charlotte finally broke the stillness after a few moments of silence between the two of them, her voice being soft but unmistakable. When Charlotte eventually looked up, she remarked, "She told me not to talk unless someone asked me to," and she continued, "It was told by Grandma Camilla that I was being arrogant." The manner in which Catherine responded was a superb example of mother control. Her response was not visible to others. On her face, she maintained a calm and comforting look. On the other hand, she was able to take in the words with pinpoint accuracy and store them away in her mind. When had this occurred, she inquired about it. Charlotte revealed that the children had been participating in a game of guessing, and that she had joyfully provided her younger brother, Prince Louis, with a hint to a question that he was having difficulty answering. It was a straightforward demonstration of sisterly support. Camilla, who had been studying the situation from a close vantage point, had leaned in and quietly corrected the situation at that moment. It was evident from Charlotte's manner that she had been taken entirely off guard by the severe reprimand. Charlotte's interruption had been utterly irrelevant, and it was plain that she had been caught off guard. Catherine gave Charlotte a hard embrace while affectionately caressing her hair as she embraced her. It was a peaceful moment, yet it had a profound significance. I'm not talking about a single remark made on the spur of the moment. A child's innocent excitement was pierced by that statement, particularly when it came from a person of authority inside the family. It was about how that comment had landed and how it had crushed that enthusiasm. Since a long time ago, Catherine had maintained a friendship with Camilla that was not only courteous, but also really loving. There was no public friction between the two most senior women in the monarchy, and both of them had made significant attempts to look united during royal engagements. Neither of them had felt threatened by the other. It was a well-known fact among those who were associated with the palace that their styles were quite different from one another. Camilla had a conventional perspective on the hierarchy and decorum of the institution, which she developed as a result of her aristocratic upbringing and her lengthy and difficult trip into the institution's core. In her society, it was common for children to be expected to be seen rather than heard in order for them to comprehend their position in the hierarchy of things. On the other hand, Catherine, who was born into a different generation and had a close-knit middle-class upbringing, had advocated for more contemporary ways to parenting. At the same time as William, she had put a significant amount of importance on maintaining mental health and emotional openness, particularly with regard to her children. Up until that point, Catherine had been operating under the idea that these generational and stylistic distinctions would not have any direct or negative impact on her children. Nevertheless, the sight of Charlotte's crestfallen face called that conviction into question. A later part of the day, when the family was supposed to be going on a stroll around the gorgeous Windsor grounds, they got back together. Catherine accompanied Charlotte on her stroll, her hand softly resting on her daughter's shoulder as she kept a close eye on her. In the distance, Camilla was seen strolling beside King Charles, engaging in idle chatter and pointing out a variety of flowers, as if the previous episode had been completely forgotten or had never taken place at all. Nothing was mentioned by Catherine. She was not the kind of person to instigate a public altercation. Her strength had always been in her ability to observe, quietly make conclusions after careful consideration, and most crucially, to choose the appropriate time to take action. Following their excursion in the garden, they all went back to one of the bigger drawing rooms for one more round of tea and another round of goodies. Now that the environment had become more laid back, the youngsters were able to walk about with more freedom. At a certain moment, Charlotte, who seemed to have regained her composure, went up to the table where refreshments were being served and grabbed for a second donut. When Camilla glanced down, she was standing close and having a conversation with another visitor. "Perhaps one is sufficient, my darling," she remarked with a tender tone in her voice. "We would prefer not to give the impression that we are greedy." Not in a loud voice, of course. It was not offensive in any way. Catherine, who was seeing the situation from the other side of the room, felt as if she had been hit by a sharp stone. And there it was, once again. A statement that is not only subtle but also cutting, and it is clothed in a half-smile, yet has a noticeable edge. A pattern was beginning to emerge. Small comments, modest corrections, and apparently innocent remarks may over time erode away at a child's confidence like water on stone. These are all examples of something that can happen. The attention of Catherine was focused on Charlotte. Despite the fact that the little girl did not seem to be protesting or reacting overtly, she instantly retreated from the table, her hand being drawn back as if it were from a warming surface. After a short moment of innocent enjoyment, she returned to her seat in a calm manner, putting an end to the encounter. It was at that very time when Catherine's worries were crystal clear to her. The occurrences in question were neither singular occurrences or straightforward happenings, They were signs that were not only subtle but persistent, nearly undetectable when taken separately, but when placed together, they formed a picture that was both plain and concerning. It was not Camilla that she confronted. William, who was still deeply engaged in conversation with his father and other senior staff members, was not informed until much later. But she took a resolute mental note of it. She would continue to keep an eye on things from that point on. When compared to any other time in history, in the evening, Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed herself when they were back in the comfort of Adelaide Cottage, which was their home on the Windsor estate. She asked her daughter in a kind manner whether she had experienced any feelings of unease during the day, as she was sitting on the edge of her daughter's bed at the bedside light. Another moment of hesitation passed before Charlotte finally said, "A little, but I'm okay." Catherine brushed her hair away from her forehead and smoothed it back. Her voice was quiet as she spoke, "My love, you don't need to pretend. At any time, you are entitled to openly express how you are feeling. Constantly." As Charlotte gazed up at her mother's eyes, which were still youthful, had a knowledge that beyond her years. She made a remark that was straightforward, but profoundly revealing a statement that made it possible to bypass all of the grown-up intricacies and royal formalities. "The fact that I speak too much is something that Grandma Camilla dislikes." There it was, without any filters or adult interpretation, a raw comment from a toddler who had experienced the uncomfortable sensation of being disapproved of. Catherine offered her reassurance, her tone resonating with both enthusiasm and conviction. She gave her a kiss on the forehead and assured her that she had not done anything wrong, that all she needed to do was be nice, courteous, and most importantly, herself, whenever she needed to be. William took his gaze away from the papers that were sitting on his desk as she made her way down the hallway and past the study. It was as if he could read the face of his wife like a book. "Do you think she is okay?" he inquired, his brow furrowing in worry as he continued. Catherine said, "She's trying to be," in a voice that was steady yet carried the weight of the day. What ended up happening was a lengthy and private chat between the husband and the wife, a conversation that was not motivated by anger, but rather by the calm and unwavering clarity of a mother. She proceeded to retell what Charlotte had spoken. The statement about showing off, the remark about greedy, and the subtle but constant adjustments were all things that she reported as having been witnessed by her. William listened attentively, his countenance becoming more tense as she continued to speak. Indeed, he did not interrupt. It was not something that they would choose to disregard. Not any longer. The events that followed would begin to influence the way in which the Prince and Princess of Wales would approach future family gatherings, and the manner in which they would choose to safeguard their children even from inside the familial unit that is the most prominent and influential in Britain. Catherine was faced with a new set of royal responsibilities the next week, and along with them she was also faced with new choices. Her consciousness was no longer passive after the distressing events that had place at Windsor. Rather, it became active. It was not a formal complaint that she had filed. The problem had not been brought up with Camilla during the lunch, nor had it been brought up with any of the other members of the royal household. An action of this sort would have been in direct opposition to her character as well as the unwritten regulations that govern the organization. Then, when she was alone in her own house and in her own thoughts, she was adamant about her viewpoint. A significant amount of what she had seen was sufficient to alter the way in which she proceeded, particularly with regard to Charlotte. There was a charity event for children that was going to take place in one of the royal gardens in the near future. Queen Camilla had played a significant role in the organizing of the event, and the plan called for a number of the royal grandchildren to take part in activities such as planting flowers, exploring the grounds, and mingling with the press in a picture opportunity that was meticulously arranged, but nevertheless delightful. There was a time when Princess Charlotte was included on the list of those who were going to attend along with Prince George and Prince Louis. But Catherine made a shift in a stealthy manner. The aides at the palace who were in charge of planning the occasion were notified by her that Charlotte would not be there. It was said that she was suffering from a minor cold, which was not a major illness, but was sufficient enough to merit her staying at home to rest. It was an excuse that was both believable and unquestionable. When it came down to it, Catherine just did not want Charlotte to be present in that area. Not at this time. Not when the recollection of Camilla's comments was still so young, and not in a setting in which Camilla would be a prominent presence. The goal was not to protect her kid from the challenging experiences that life had to offer. Protecting her from being quietly degraded in a setting where she ought to feel comfortable, appreciated, and protected was the goal of this endeavor. Catherine did not bring it to the attention of the public. There were no more explanations provided by her. However, the choice was noted inside the palace's circles of influence, which were both secretive and interwoven. Royal households, despite the fact that they are subject to public decision function similarly to densely populated communities. As information moves around, assistants communicate with one another, senior members confer with one another, and timetables are compared and contrasted. It was not long before Camilla's office received the news that Charlotte would not be attending the event that she had assisted in organizing. Her reaction, which was reported, was succinct and revealing. It is alleged that she cocked an eyebrow and said under her breath, "Probably too delicate for a little mud," when there was a casual mention of it by a member of her staff. Additionally, that remark was undoubtedly sent to Catherine by means of the informal communication network that existed inside the palace. That was yet another casual comment, yet another apparently insignificant statement that when considered in isolation may seem to be innocuous. But when it was joined to the other things, it carried a considerable amount of weight. This provided more evidence that the preceding episodes were not only instances of generational conflict or misunderstanding with one another. A pattern of dismissive behavior toward a youngster that was shrouded in smiles and offhand comments was prevalent, and these actions were part of that larger pattern. Catherine was no longer in a state of wait and see, despite the fact that she did not reply to that statement either. She was keeping a watchful eye, making notes, and being ready to take action if and when the situation demanded it. The moment had arrived far sooner than anticipated. Highgrove House, the cherished country house of King Charles in Gloucestershire, was the location of a special dinner service that had been planned. The evening was not a formal official celebration. Rather, it was a private occasion for the king to spend time with his two children, William and Catherine. The goal was straightforward, a lunch that was meant to be calm sometime to talk about forthcoming trips and engagements, and a venue where the family could be together in an atmosphere that was not too stressful. She took Charlotte along for the visit when they arrived that evening. Catherine brought Charlotte along. The intention was not for it to be a lengthy stay. Charlotte was supposed to greet her grandpa before going upstairs to spend the night with her nanny. The intention was for Charlotte to go to bed earlier than usual. It was a simple, friendly gesture, the kind that would have almost certainly gone undetected in a normal situation. Nevertheless, in this particular instance, it served as the setting for a quick and decisive change. Charlotte entered the drawing room with the immaculate manners that she always had, smiling and welcoming everyone who was there. The words, "Good evening, Grandpa," were said by her to Charles, who smiled warmly at her. Her next move was to consult with her step-grandmother. She greeted her grandmother with a gentle, "Good evening." On the other hand, Camilla, who was sitting in a relaxed manner near the fireplace and holding a glass of wine in her hand, hardly glanced up. She did not respond to the welcome with warmth. Rather, she spoke in a voice that was low, but obviously sharp. "Are you sure that you are not too tired to be here?" The statement, albeit being kind, fell with a thud in the environment that was generally warm and inviting. It was heard by everyone. For a split second, William was completely out of his mind. Charles moved slightly in his seat, a trace of unease appearing on his face as he did so. On the other hand, Catherine was the one who took action. Her expression shifted slightly. It was a face of calm, steely resolution that took the place of the pleasant grin that was directed toward the public. There was no break in eye contact between her and Camilla. The volume of her voice was not raised. She did not cause a drama to occur. However, her energy altered, and it made the air in the room seem charged. With a tone that was calm but forceful, she turned to Charlotte and said, "Why don't you go upstairs with Anna and say goodnight to Grandpa now?" After a brief moment of uncertainty, Charlotte nodded, indicating that she had picked up on the heightened tension. After giving Charles a brief embrace, she walked up to him and then exited the room with Anna, who had been the family's nanny for a very long time. The door shut with a subtle but unmistakable click as it closed behind them. The stillness that followed was one that was thick and weighted. With her wine glass still in her hand, Camilla leaned back in her chair and wore a look that was difficult to decipher on her face. "Well, she's very sensitive, isn't she?" she said in a light-hearted manner, seeking to brush off the situation after a silence that seemed to last for an eternity. The spark that ignited the kindling was that particular spark. Catherine moved slightly forward in her position. Even though she maintained her composure, each and every word that she said was intentional, precise, and unrelenting. Her eyes remained glued on Camilla as she said, "No. It is not too sensitive of her. He is a little youngster. In addition, she is deserving of being treated with consideration." Camilla seemed to be taken aback, maybe not by the feeling itself, but more by the fact that it was being expressed in such a straightforward manner. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, her tone including a hint of defensiveness within it. "I was really taken aback by the fact that she is still up at this hour. It's not really anything that should cause you to be unhappy." Despite this, Catherine did not back down. The tone of her voice remained steady as she said, "It's not just tonight. This has been going on for some weeks. I am aware of what has been communicated to her, and more significantly, she is aware of it as well." Already uncomfortable, the atmosphere in the room grew electric as the tension increased. Charles, a guy who has spent his whole life resolving and attempting to de-escalate problems within his family, made an attempt to intercede. "My darling, I think it would be best if we all just—" She did not allow him to complete his sentence. "If it were just one comment, we would move on," she continued by quickly directing her focus to her father-in-law before returning her gaze to Camilla. "If it were just one comment, we would move on. However, it is not just one statement. Observe the pattern. I will not remain silent while my kid is made to feel that she is not worthy of respect." Camilla gave William a quick look, maybe anticipating that he would intervene and make things more amicable as he is known to do so often. However, he did not speak, and his silence served as a tremendous validation of the statements made by his wife. The weight of their combined power as the Prince and Princess of Wales was given to Catherine's voice as a result of his silence, which amplified her voice. "I have made an effort to maintain peace," Catherine said, her tone resonating with a level of confidence that was both quiet and forceful. "Since that is what is anticipated of me, I will do that. Small things have been let go of by me. I have decided not to respond to this. However, this is not the same. Charlotte is the subject of this discussion, and I will not let anybody, regardless of who they are, to undermine her self-assurance here." Camilla leaned forward slightly and put her wineglass on the table with a crisp snap. She then turned her head slightly to the side. The tone of her voice was contemptuous as she continued, "You're reading too much into this. You don't ever fail to take things very seriously. Children have a strong willpower. Catherine did not show any signs of blinking." Her response was, "Children remember how they are spoken to." And although her voice was somewhat lower, it did not lose any of its punch. Her voice was not very loud, but it was not necessary for it to be this way, especially by the people who are meant to protect them. This was the voice of a mother who had reached her breaking point, and it had the type of calm power that draws attention. At that moment, William finally made his voice heard. His voice was calm and collected, devoid of any fury, yet as resolute as steel. The remarks that he said were intended at both his biological father and his stepmother. "We are asking for basic respect," he informed them. "There is nothing that Charlotte has done that is incorrect. It is only that she is being herself. There shouldn't be any issues with it." Camilla turned from William to Charles, perhaps trying to find an ally, but the king did not make any expressions of agreement, because he was aware of what was taking place. Catherine was drawing a boundary, a distinct and unmistakable line in the sand from the beginning. In addition, once a limit of that kind is established by someone with her level of determination, there is no going back on it. Catherine softly left the room after a few more uncomfortable seconds of silence had passed from the beginning of the conversation, and not long after that, William came along. Catherine made her way upstairs to check on Charlotte, who was already in the process of getting ready for bed. She did not inquire about the events that had taken place below. She did not exert any pressure. She did nothing more than sit next to her and take her hand. She assured her daughter, "There is nothing wrong with what you did tonight. You were hospitable. You exhibited consideration. That is the only status you will ever need." Charlotte glanced up at her mother and responded with a response that was so straightforward that it broke her heart. "I try to be." "There is no need for you to strive to be perfect," Catherine replied, her tone dripping with the weight of her feelings. "All you have to do is be yourself." Upstairs, the atmosphere at Highgrove had undergone a change that could not be reversed. However, despite Charles's efforts to lighten the mood by engaging in idle chatter and subjects of conversation, the tension continued to be there. Little was uttered by Camilla. Although she did not apologize, she did not defend herself again. She did not make an apology. The argument had been presented. When they returned to Adelaide Cottage later that evening, Catherine and William sat together in the sitting room that was reserved exclusively for them. The exertion of the day had been felt. The manner in which Catherine spoke remained unruffled, yet her conviction was unwavering. She looked at her husband and remarked, "She doesn't have to like me," to which she responded, "She will, however, treat Charlotte with the utmost respect." "Those are not up for discussion." William gave a determined nod, his face unwavering. "Yes, she will," he said. "This is because we are not going to allow this to continue. The choice has been concluded. Although the events that took place at Highgrove would not be reported in the media, they would subtly move the tectonic plates that were present inside the royal family. The peaceful, immovable force of a mother's love had established a limit, and it was not through yelling or drama that this border had been established. In addition, from that time forth, everything would be conducted differently. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.